Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. Today we're going to finish up special selections before moving into next week's theme, and we have an interesting one today, and my interest is quite piqued because of it. Today's request comes at us from Progper Youngman. I swear I've been corrected on that last name, and I could not find where that was, the proper pronunciation. So I apologize if I butchered that last name. We're going to be checking out Matten Morgan today. It says it's definitely not metal nor rock, really, neither jazz, and not really classical either. He's going to settle with truly progressive music designed to blow open minds. Tempted to draw a parallel with Superman. It's not rock. It's not classical. It's Matten Morgan. There's no denying, however, in them being highly influenced by Zappa. They actually got invited to play on his stage once in '88, and they were only 17 and 20 at the time, and they were friends with him until his tragic death. The guys found each other through their common love for Zappa and started to play together at ages 10 and 13, with other influences being Magma, Universe Zero, King Crimson, Stevie Wonder, and the Beatles. The song is called Klerpan, composed by the drummer Morgan, and it's very rhythmically enthralling, with the orchestra really having to take on a challenge. Alright, so that's a lot of great context for this. Really going to help me get into the mindset for this track, and yeah, let's dig in and see what's going on with this. Yeah, so I'm feeling like a 3 pulse with heavy delay on beats 2 and 3. Oh no, we're in 5 actually, according to the conductor. Yeah, that is a fast 5. That is not what I felt it in to start with. Very interesting. It's so weird how often I'm still feeling a 3 pulse, even though I know that it was written in 5. Oh, okay, so the conductor's gone to conducting in 3 now, so it's very cool. That's not usually something I would associate together. 3 and 5 are not time signatures or pulses that tend to get mixed well. can't figure out what it is. It sounds like a wood bell, but it's really low in the mix. I'm having a hard time really distinguishing the timbre. It's also really cool to see all of this variation on very simple ideas. We're hearing these recurring patterns all throughout this song. And now we're conducting in 2, but it doesn't feel like we've changed at all. Oh, actually, yeah, we have a very standard beat now. We don't have that extra. Thanks to those plucked strings really laying down that rhythm. Just a very slight tempo shift, enough to just throw it off. Interesting to note also is how often we have higher end ranges, sort of at the forefront, and how rarely I've really heard much to the lower ends. As soon as I say that, of course. When your conductors get into it, you know it's a good part of the song. Yeah, laying that snare down on 2 and 4. Really creating a lot of drive there with that snare work and the hi-hat. Yeah, there's this really nice crescendo and decrescendo with something that sounded brassy. Just these really like light stingers and then swelling into it and coming out. Wow. It's also interesting, I'm pretty sure, without knowing for certain, without being told, I know who Mats and Morgan are, because they're the only people not using sheet music. It's just very much that rock mentality of just memorize it, and just like relying on your memory rather than the orchestra, who have practiced it a million times. They probably have it memorized still, but you just have the music in front of you. It's just what you do. So I would suppose Morgan's the drummer here, and Mats was the dude on the keyboard that didn't have the sheet music. The other one did. It's just such a rock thing, just to not have the sheet music in front of you. I mean, possibly because they can't read it. I don't know. Um, I wonder how this is going to be a little bit of a divergent, but I wonder how prevalent that is in popular musics, rock, metal, maybe even pop singers, and some of your pop stars who play guitar. Um, I wonder, or piano, I suppose. I wonder how many of them can read music and how many of them just play what they feel and then remember what they played. Or maybe in some cases, somebody else writes the song for them and then they're taught through like a rote process where it's played for them and then they play it back, and then they practice it until it's memorized. Um, yeah, just I wonder how prevalent that is because a lot of pop and rock and metal country nobody really brings sheet music with them, so you don't really get a feel for it with their live performances or their music videos or anything. So it's really a behind the scenes thing that you don't get to see too often. And yeah, I'm a little intrigued about that now. Is it just a preference to do it without? Is it more of a staple of modern music to play without it? Or is it just because so many people can't read the sheet music, so they just find other ways to practice and learn how to perform it? All right, anyways, let's get back to this though. This was a wild ride, and I think a ride is easily the best way to put it. There isn't a lot of melody coming on to sort of tell a story. So, really, it's sort of like these emotions, these atmospheres that get created, and how they're strung together, and the way that they're positioned next to each other, and the way that we move through them, that kind of give this idea not so much of a story, but a string of ideas. Not to say it's disjointed, but a string of ideas that take you on a ride, like a roller coaster, for instance. You have, the going up, then the drop, then the loop the loop, then the corkscrew. You can see all the individual components, but that doesn't mean that it's disjointed when it all comes together. It's still a fantastic ride when you go on it, and in the moment, you don't really see the structure of it. You just see the track ahead of you, and that's sort of what happened here. Just listening to it, it's just all these different things, and they're really fun, really cool stuff, and they're all being strung together very nicely. But when you step back and really start to look at it, you're like, oh, okay, so this happened here, this happened here, this piece was this part that we started with, but with a different idea on top of it. And without, like I said, a strong melody line to sort of provide a musical narrative, so to speak, it really does feel like all these different ideas coming together. And a lot of that, as Progper mentioned, is due to the fact that the drummer wrote it and it ends up being more of a rhythmic exploration rather than a sort of melodic one. What's really cool though is that there's still a lot of harmony in here. And that is not something I typically associate with people who are rhythmically oriented in music. So I think that's really neat. Um, yeah, this is very deep though. This is a very deep song. I'm barely gonna scratch the surface with this analysis, but I mean, let's get into it. We're gonna try our best here. First of all, as to be expected with a group of people, or two people, I suppose, who are influenced by so many progressive minds from their time period, time signature is a huge thing, especially given that the drummer wrote it. We started out in what I felt was 3, but was conducted in 5. We eventually moved into a 3. We hit a 2 somewhere, and around the ending, I'm not sure what we were in. The conductor was very nuanced with his conducting style. It's very, very withheld, right? I saw the downbeats. He would give very strong downbeats, but everything in between was very small movements, and he was doing a lot of double movements. So like if you're doing 4, you go down, left, right, up, down, left, right, up. And those are very distinct. But once you get into larger numbers like 6s and 7s, we don't really use diagonals when conducting, so you end up doubling things. So sometimes you might do, down, left, right, right, up for 5, which I think is what he did. but he was doing, I think it was like 6 or 7, and there was two doubles in it, but the movement was so, so small, so fine. I'm not acclimated to his conducting style to really read something that complex from the 5-4 shots maybe I got of it during that period. So yeah, we had 5, we had 3, we had 2, and then we had something like a 6, I think, or a 7. I was trying to count it out, and it's just the tempo's fast, and they were doing some really interesting things rhythmically. So really getting that downbeat was not simple, especially since I think that the emphasized beat was actually the and of one rather than the downbeat of one, which really made it more difficult to line up with. Um, but yeah, so moving through a lot of really cool time signatures, but it's not just that. We were experiencing a lot of polymeter, and that's what happened at the beginning with the time signature technically being probably a 5/4, a very fast 5/4, mind you, but then also having this slower 3/4 feel in the lower end instruments that were starting out. And that 3 against 5 idea, that's polymeter, where you can hear a 3 pulse and you can hear a 5 pulse. That is polymeter right there. And just to start the song so heavily in that, to me, that's the thesis statement. So many aspects of this song can be felt in multiple ways, and to me, that shows a great rhythmic and temporal mind as far as music writing goes, which makes sense for a drummer, especially one influenced by a bunch of progressive people, so, or progressive groups, I should say. But just a very cool way to start that. If I remember correctly, the very first thing we hear is just that what was it? It was like a segmented lower end pattern. Really, it was like the beginning was a little quick, and then the ending, the last 2 notes were a little slower, like they were pulling back a little bit. Felt like it was dragging a little, but we get that one line against the 5 conducting, and like I said, a thesis statement. The song starts and tells you exactly what it's going to be about. Highly rhythmic, highly polymetric. There we go. Done. And I think that's awesome, just to set the expectations right there at the start. It's a fantastic way to begin a song. The other thing I really liked about it, again, was the harmony, which I think surprises me. Coming from the beginning, which again is very rhythmically centered. And we actually explore a lot of rhythmic ideas there in the first minute or so. But once we really get into the song and it starts rolling, there's actually some really cool harmonies going on and a bit of counterpoint as well. Counterpoint is not so different because it kind of is an idea on sort of like metric modulation, where we have polymeter. We have 2 different time signatures going on. We have 2 different melodies going on. And I know I said the song doesn't have a lot of melody, but there are what I would consider lead lines. They're all repetitious and loop based, which is why I don't typically classify them into melody. But we do have these repeating lines that I would say are the star of the sections. And sometimes we do have multiples of those, and sometimes they are staggered. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit because there's a lot of ideas, a lot of concept of theme going on in this song. But it is really cool to get so much harmony going on with various instruments really layering up the sounds to create these nice, rich tritones or triads throughout this song. And it gives the song that orchestral width that you kind of expect just by putting the same line either in multiple parts of the same instrument, like violin 1, violin 2, or different instruments to get a timbre layering as well, and then you just layer them up. Violin 1 plays this note, violin 2 plays this note, viola 1 plays this note up here. I think that's backwards, but whatever. But then you get this nice, rich sound with these mixing timbres as well. And just excellent use of the orchestra and the wide width of timbres and voices that they get, that affordance of using an orchestra. So yeah, really great stuff at the harmony. Um, Theme. Let's get into this. So the very beginning, we hear this idea. I don't remember what it is. It was three notes in the lower end, and the first note seemed to give it a certain direction, and the last two notes seemed to pull it back a little bit. Um, so we start with this simple idea: three notes, rhythmically syncopated, and we put some ideas on top of that. And we put some ideas on top of that, and we put some ideas on top of that, and we continue to increase the rhythmic complexity here. And then the next section, we sort of retain that same lower end idea. I don't remember if it was in those same instruments or if it got passed on to a different instrument in a similar range. But it gets moved, and we get new ideas on top of it. We get to recontextualize those ideas. And part of that recontextualization, if I remember correctly, was a different time feel. Like I said, the beginning, I felt emphasized the 3, but in the second section, I really felt that 5, even though that lower end drone that was going on with those 3 notes were still, as far as I was concerned, emphasizing that 3 pulse. But the dominant pulse, the dominant meter was 5 at this point. So I thought that was really cool. And this idea crops up everywhere. I think section 2, there was a dominant line, sort of the droning or the repeating, the looping part of it. It doesn't show up in part 3, but then it comes back in part 4, utilizing some of the ideas from 3. And again, we get to recontextualize this concept we've already heard in a new light and hear how it works against other parts of the band. Or other parts of the song. Just really cool ideas of basically theme and variation, taking a single idea and putting variation on it, putting a different spin on it, putting it in different contexts, changing up or keeping the context and changing up some of the droning stuff. Just this idea of this slow metamorphosis where you slowly stack things and then you take one piece out, you put a new piece in, and take a couple pieces out, put a couple pieces back in. So you always have this full sound, but you're never moving the entire band at the same time. Well, I should say you're rarely moving the entire band at the same time. Certain instruments are being moved to the next section, and then maybe other instruments are moved to the next section, and then maybe one of the instruments goes back to their old stuff, and then an instrument comes into the new part as well, and it's just this I don't know, it's like a Jenga tower that just doesn't fall. You keep taking blocks out and stacking them up, and the shape is changing, but the blocks are the same, if that makes any sense. That's kind of a weird analogy. I don't know where I came to that, but I'm going to stick with it. Let's see, what else is really... I'm going to have to give this another listen, because like I said, it's incredibly dense, especially on a rhythmic level. But there was something else that stood out to me, and I cannot remember what it is. Okay, so the song, to me, sort of has this concept of sitting in place, having this, bundled up energy. Not really being able to go anywhere, but all this bubbling tension under the surface. And I think it's really awesome that right at the end, I think it was the final section, I think when we moved into that faster 6 or 7 feel, the drums, you know what? I think it was the 2 feel. Or we entered 4/4 as well. Completely forgot about that. I think it was conducted in 2 just because it was such a fast 4. Because you don't want your conductor up there going losing his mind just conducting so fast. So he conducts in 2 and you just got to subdivide. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to feel the 4. He's conducting a 2. But I'm pretty sure it was 4 because of what was going on in snare. We had this really standard rock beat of a constant hi-hat with snare on 2 and 4, emphasizing it, really giving it that backbeat direction. And yeah, that section right there was the moment when the potential energy, all this bottled up energy that just wants to get out, is released. The song gets direction, it gets momentum. It's not just exploring a single concept within a vacuum. We're actually going somewhere. And I felt that that was just a beautiful idea of this chaotic burst of energy. Um, I don't know. I kind of get this idea of a supernova when I listen to this. I don't know what Klerpan means, so I'm not sure if this is anything that they were thinking of when they wrote the song. But I mean, we have this ball of energy that just sits there, this star, and it's just sitting there in space with all this potential energy. And then one day, I don't know if anybody else gets that idea listening to this, but the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, yeah, man, I'm really getting supernova feelings out of this. And yeah, it's probably just me being weird, having a weird relationship with music. But yeah, that's what I'm getting out of it for some odd reason. I also really like how the song ends with this calm dissipation. I think it's very orchestral. There's really two big ways that I tend to think of when I think to end a piece like this. You get a really strong final chord, and then everybody cuts off, and you get the little reverberation, assuming you have fantastic acoustics in your playing area. Um, or you just kind of let everything peter out, and then you hold a lower note and let that disperse. And they went for the latter, letting the song come down from its heights and then slowly disperse out. And like I said, I don't know where that fits thematically into any of it, but I just think it's a really nice way to sort of have this idea of the bottled up energy and then the burst of energy, and then the energy gets drained because it's finally being utilized, and it just peters out. The energy gets used until there is no more. So that kind of fits. That kind of fits with the supernova analogy. Oh man. So yeah, this was really fun. I'm not. I'm gonna have to check out some more. I'm not 100% in love with it from a casual listening perspective, but as a critical listener, there is so much to dig into here. I will probably give this another listen, and if I find the hour, I'm gonna check out this whole, because this is a whole live set. The link in the description is going to be the entire hour long concert. Um, and if I can find the hour, I'm probably gonna try to check this out sometime this month, because I'm very intrigued. I like this concept here, and I'm interested in what Matz and Morgan can do when they're not rhythmically oriented. Maybe when the drummer's not creating a piece by himself. Maybe when they're working together, or when we get the other side of the equation, the pianist, kind of see the breadth of their work. But this. You know what this reminds me of? Um, what was that guy's name? Copeland. Uh, Dang, we checked out his work during Video Game Week. He wrote the Spyro soundtrack. I can't think of his name. Oh man, it's gonna upset me. Stuart Copeland. That's what this reminds me of. His song, "Lurking Solo." Yep, I'm getting a lot of that here, which is just really cool, because Copeland is a fantastic composer. If I remember correctly, he was the drummer for the Police. Is that right? But we see a pattern here of drummers writing these really rhythmic oriented musics, and I think it's just because drumming is very rhythmic in itself, especially, well, at least it prioritizes rhythm over sort of melody. But yeah, so I'm very enthused with this. I'm gonna have to check out more. Prague Per, fantastic pick for this for today. And I feel really bad stopping right now because I know I've only scratched the surface, but I don't think there's anything else I could say without a second listen, to really dig in more, knowing what I'm in for, and having that surface level out of the way and being able to focus on the things underneath it. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'd have anything that's worth taking the time to say. It'd be mostly me trying to scramble to put some thoughts together. But like I said, I am a bit disappointed because I do know that I've just scratched the surface with this song. All right, with that said, this is where you guys come in and hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Let me know if anything stuck out to you in particular that maybe I missed. When you're done commenting, you head up to the description box. There's a link in there for Linktree. It has everything associated with the channel. If you want to join the Discord, support us through Patreon, or follow me on Twitter, send a special selection request. All those links are in there. Above that, you can like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll be starting next week's theme of melodic death metal, also known as melodeath, which I'm interested in. I think melodeath is something that has caught my interest the couple of times we've checked it out, and we've checked out a couple of things that are melodeath parallel to it, I suppose, parallel to melodeath, and a lot of people have told me that this would be a genre that I would probably get into, so I'm interested in it. It has from what I understand, it has the harsh elements of death metal, but has some melodic elements as well, which sounds like a great pairing since that's what I'm trying to get into. It matches what I already enjoy and helps me try to get into some of the stuff I don't quite jive with yet. Alright, well, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.